The time by Caracris is 6 p.m. and this is CBX Business News. The business news headlines are brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible. JMEA holds course, Barbados strengthens deposit protection, and the UN pushes urgent climate action. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Thursday, June 25, 2026. I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association has reappointed its leadership team as the manufacturing sector prepares to navigate competitiveness pressures, export expansion, and wider economic challenges. Also ahead, Barbados moves to extend deposit protection to credit union members in a step towards strengthening financial security and consumer confidence. And later, the United Nations is pushing for aggressive global methane emissions cuts as climate pressures intensify and calls grow for faster action. Stay with us as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
Mikey, is what sweet you saw?
Yeah, dear babes. Where's the catty? Me and you go party tonight.
Party? You secure your future yet? Careless.
Did you know that over time the stock market has provided a reliably high return on investments? Be sure to contact a licensed stockbroker for more information on this exciting investment opportunity.
Taking care of business, Mikey?
Yeah, catty. I'm securing my future. Want to come look over my stock portfolio?
The Jamaica Stock Exchange, providing a fair, efficient, and transparent stock market.
The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, Tease the Senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with leadership continuity at one of Jamaica's most influential private sector organizations. The Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, JMEA, has moved to maintain leadership continuity for another year, reappointing its core executive team as the organization prepares to navigate what remains a challenging period for Jamaica's manufacturing and export sectors. At the association's annual general meeting on Wednesday, Catherine Silvera was reappointed as president, while Cecil Foster was re-elected deputy president. Members also retained the association's treasurer, Damian Dodd, and nominated 8 directors to serve on the board for the new term. Those directors include Mark Frankson, Aswat Morgan, Lisa Johnston, Conroy Rose, Tammy Brown, Archie Williams, John O. Minot, and Dimitri Dawkins, all of whom will help shape the organization's strategic direction over the coming year. President Silvera says, despite a difficult year for manufacturers, the association has continued delivering results while laying the foundation for future growth.
This past year tested our resilience in ways few could have predicted. And I don't think I would have gone up for president if I knew Hurricane Melissa. Hurricane Melissa disrupted operations, damaged facilities, interrupted supply chains, and affected businesses across multiple parishes. Feedback from 78 member companies told a clear story, one of disruption, but also recovery already in motion. Many of our members faced difficult weeks and even months of recovery and uncertainty. Yet what impressed me the most was the speed of the response. Businesses reopened, employees returned to work, production resumed, communities supported each other. Manufacturers stepped forward not only to rebuild their businesses, but to assist in national recovery efforts.
With leadership continuity now secured, the JMEA president says the association's focus in the year ahead will center on strengthening Jamaica's manufacturing sector.
This next term, we will focus on several strategic priorities. First, we will deepen our investment in industry data and intelligence to strengthen our advocacy and support better decision-making. Second, we will continue to pursue export diversification, including value-added products built on our agricultural strengths, and identify new opportunities for Jamaican products and services in international markets. We must also begin to think about how we attract more than just the diaspora. The world already celebrates Jamaica's culture, music, and athletes. We must now draw that same global attention to our products and services. Third, we will strengthen our workforce development initiatives and invest in future talent. Fourth, we will expand our advocacy on competitiveness issues, including energy, labor policy reform, logistics, and the cost of doing business.
Meanwhile, the association says labor reform will be one of its biggest priorities moving forward, with President Silvera noting that improving workforce productivity has become critical to strengthening business competitiveness and unlocking faster economic growth.
Labor reform is essential to moving the Jamaican economy forward. Labor drives productivity, productivity drives economic growth and development. The JMEA will work with other private sector partners to develop and advocate for practical labor and workforce reforms that improve productivity, strengthen competitiveness, and support business growth. Our goal is not simply to react to labor challenges, but to help shape a modern workforce that benefits both the employee and the employers, while positioning Jamaica for long-term economic success.
That was re-elected JMEA President Catherine Silvera. Jamaica's new micro market is being positioned as a potential game changer for entrepreneurship and economic growth, with the government arguing that the platform could finally solve one of the biggest barriers facing small businesses: access to capital. Speaking with CBX Business News following the official launch of the Jamaica Stock Exchange micro market, Finance Minister Favour Williams says the initiative creates a new entry point for micro and emerging businesses that often struggle to secure financing needed to expand operations.
We have just great expectation for the micro market. If you look at how our economy is structured right now, you look at the number of businesses that are in it, at the base are many micro, small, medium enterprises, right? It's like a pyramid in terms of the size of the companies. What a lot of those small businesses struggle with is financing the ideas and the product growth that they would like. Yes, we have banks, we have angel investors, we have private investors, and so on. A lot of times it's difficult to make the connection. As a small business person from rural Jamaica, let's say.
It can look daunting.
How do you find the person to invest to help you move to the next stage?
She says the platform will not only help businesses raise capital, but will also force stronger financial reporting, better corporate governance, and greater operational transparency.
Creating the micro market means that the capitalization level for your company is lower in terms of you have an entry point, more possible entry point at which you can get in. it opens up your business.
Yes, yes.
To scrutiny, to transparency. It makes you stronger in terms of the pillars of your business, in terms of finance, corporate governance, and so on, because these are the things you have to have.
The structure.
Right. Whereas when you are an entrepreneur, you know, you're just running and going.
Yeah, doing something.
It's just do it, right?
Yeah.
But this will allow you to structure your business.
Will be streamlined.
Streamlined.
Yeah.
Because those who want to come in to invest are looking for that corporate governance. They're looking to make sure your financial affairs are in line. You have to report to the public.
At the same time, Williams says Jamaica's economic growth cannot depend on government alone, arguing that entrepreneurs and private sector innovation will be critical drivers of future GDP expansion.
It's capital creation. It's company formation that we're encouraging, and that's how we get the growth that we want to see in GDP. GDP growth is it's not about government.
Yeah.
Government spending will help companies, but we want companies to come with ideas, products, services. We want them to look at bigger markets than Jamaica.
That was Jamaica's Finance Minister Favour Williams. In other news, Jamaica's trade performance weakened sharply in the first quarter of this year, with new data showing a significant drop in export earnings, despite a modest decline in the country's import bill. According to the latest International Merchandise Trade Report released by the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, export earnings between January and March fell 22.3% to just $376.6 million, down from $484.6 million in the same period last year. The decline was largely driven by a steep 48.7% contraction in crude materials exports, excluding fuels, pointing to softer external demand in one of Jamaica's major export categories. Meanwhile, total imports for the quarter stood at $1.87 billion, representing a smaller 1.3% decline compared with the first quarter of 2025. The decrease was mainly attributed to lower spending on consumer goods, along with reduced fuel and lubricant imports. Now to news from the petroleum market. Fuel prices declined across the board on Thursday, with reductions recorded in all major categories. Automotive diesel fell by $10.50 and is now selling for $201.25 per liter. 87 gasoline declined by 25 cents to $193.13, while 90 gasoline fell by 25 cents to $200.58. Propane recorded a decline of $2.10, bringing the price to $79.07. Kerosene dropped by $4.50 to $185.90, while butane fell by $3.06 to $87.54. Meanwhile, ultra-low sulfur diesel declined by $3.06 and is now selling for $217.54 per liter. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Thursday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 105 stocks, of which 45 advanced, 42 declined, and 18 traded firm. Leading the winners are KLE Group, 138 Student Living Jamaica, Blue Power Group, and Proven Group USD, while leading the losers are Caribbean Cream, Kintyre Holdings JA, Main Event Entertainment Group, and Image Plus Consultants. The main index advanced by 102.42 points to close at 351,827.15 points. The junior market index advanced by 8.89 points to close at 3,024.77 points. It's time for the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. In today's Market Education feature, we're defining the term guarantor. A guarantor is a person who agrees to repay a borrower's debt if the borrower is unable to meet their loan obligations. Guarantors are often required when a borrower has little credit history or does not fully meet a lender's requirements. Unlike the borrower, a guarantor does not have ownership rights over the asset connected to the loan, even though they take on financial responsibility if payments are not made. That was the Market Education feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Are so much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. The St. Lucian government has approved sweeping changes to its tax system, introducing new relief measures designed to improve tax compliance, support land ownership, and stimulate economic activity. The legislation passed in Parliament on Wednesday reduces interest charges on overdue income taxes from 12% to 6%, with Prime Minister Philip J. Peer describing it as the most generous tax amnesty ever offered to taxpayers.
We are now saying that the interest on the penalties, we are reducing it from 6%, from 12% to 6%. This means, Mr. Speaker, that in your unpaid taxes, the interest, the accumulative interest is reduced to 6%.
The Prime Minister says the reforms also introduce new incentives for property ownership, allowing qualified buyers to claim tax deductions on interest paid on land loans.
For a piece of land, if you are a young person or anyone who buys a piece of land that is less than 22,000 square feet, the government is saying that the interest that you pay to the financial institution, you can claim 50% of that interest as an allowable deduction on your income tax. That is in addition to the threshold of $40,000 that you have generally on your taxes. That is in addition. Again, an incentive to young people. To young people to buy a piece of land in there, and hopefully they can probably shift their priorities and get a piece of land, because there's a benefit, in that case, a tax benefit.
Meanwhile, St. Lucia is also easing compliance pressures on companies after Parliament approved new rules giving businesses more time to file their income tax returns. The new law extends the filing deadline from 3 months to 5 months after the end of a company's financial year. A move government says better reflects the realities businesses face completing audited financial statements. Prime Minister Peer says many companies have struggled under the existing deadline due to the complexity of audits and a shortage of qualified auditors.
Because it's a known fact that many companies, because of the rigorous nature of audits, cannot file their returns 3 months after the end. First of all, there are a shortage of auditors, and secondly, because of the rigid accounting standards, the auditors want to be very certain and very sure. So they get great difficulty in preparing the statements for review and in 3 months. So what we're saying is that we understand that, and the government is saying that we are extending that period for filing from 3 months to 5 months.
That was St. Lucia's Prime Minister and Finance Minister Philip J. Pierre. In the Eastern Caribbean, thousands of Barbadians who save through credit unions are now one step closer to receiving the same financial protection as commercial bank customers after the House of Assembly passed the Protection of Depositors Bill 2026. The bill extends deposit insurance coverage to eligible credit union members, closing a long-standing gap in Barbados' financial system. Speaking in Parliament on Tuesday, Minister in the Ministry of Finance Ryan Strawn says the reform is particularly important for individuals who rely on credit unions as their primary financial institution.
Because currently we have in place a system that is bifurcated, divided, where only commercial banks and Part 3 deposit-taking institutions have coverage since 2006, technically 2007 when it became operational, and leaving out the credit union movement, sir, that ordinary citizens who, over time, have had issues either getting a bank account, sir, and therefore worked with the credit unions to be able to be included. And so this bill is intended to expand the coverage with respect to deposits such that every box is ticked as it relates to our financial system.
That was Barbados Finance Minister Ryan Strawn. At the same time, Barbados is facing fresh calls to remove barriers to banking services after concerns were raised about delays in opening new bank accounts. Christchurch West Member of Parliament Dr. William Duguid raised the issue during debate on the Protection of Depositors Bill, saying lengthy account opening processes are hurting financial inclusion.
And I understand why people go to credit unions. It takes too long to get a bank account in Barbados. It takes too long. There are people and there are places and jurisdictions that you could get a bank account online in hours. And the banking, and I understand the know your customer regime in Barbados. But we have to do something about the time it takes to set up a bank account in Barbados.
That was Barbados MP for Christchurch West, Dr. William Duguid. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 20 securities, of which 6 advanced, 5 declined, and 9 traded firm. Today's winners are Unilever Caribbean, Massey Holdings, the West Indian Tobacco Company, and Angostura Holdings, while leading the losers are National Flour Mills, National Enterprises, Republic Financial Holdings, and ANSA Merchant Bank. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All TNT Index declined by 3.41 points to close at 1,428.39. The Composite Index also declined, but by 1.77 points to close at 986.43. The Cross-Listed Index remained at 71.84, with the SME Index also remaining at 86.92. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment is up next.
feeling so good right now. Feeling so good right now, yeah, yeah. It's feeling so good right now. Feeling so good right now, yeah, yeah. It's feeling so good right now. Don't never, ever, ever wanna calm down. Oh, no, no, yeah, yeah.
Welcome back. In international news, United Nations UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for urgent global action to sharply reduce methane emissions, warning that the world must accelerate its transition away from fossil fuels to avoid worsening climate and energy crises. Speaking during London Climate Action Week on Tuesday, Guterres launched a global call to action focused on cutting methane emissions from waste, agriculture, and fossil fuel production. He says methane accounts for roughly 1/3 of global warming and is nearly 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide over the short term.
The G20, which is responsible for around 80% of global emissions, must lead. The principle of common but differentiated responsibilities applies, but every major emitter must do much more. And every country must over-deliver on its commitments by accelerating the shift away from fossil fuels towards clean energy, as governments committed at the 2023 UN Climate Conference, by halting deforestation and restoring nature, and by rapidly reducing carbon dioxide emissions from coal, oil and gas production and consumption.
The UN chief also singled out the oil and gas industry as the sector where the fastest progress can be made.
This is why voluntary action is no longer enough. The world phased out leaded gasoline. We eliminated ozone-depleting chemicals, so methane pollution must be next. And I call on producer and consumer governments alike to set a new global standard for the oil and gas sector, near zero methane emissions across the value chain.
And continuing at London Climate Action Week, Guterres is also calling for a major overhaul of the global financial system, arguing that developing nations are being unfairly locked out of the clean energy transition. He says climate and development goals will remain out of reach unless capital is mobilized at the scale and speed required to finance renewable energy and sustainable infrastructure.
Today, the global financial system is failing the countries that need support most. It overprices risk and underprices opportunity. Many developing countries face borrowing costs for clean energy and resilience that can run 2 to 3 times more than in wealthier economies. Countries rich in renewable potential are being locked out of the clean energy revolution.
He pointed to growing imbalances in global investment patterns, noting that many developing countries continue to face significantly higher borrowing costs for clean energy and climate adaptation projects.
Africa is home to 60% of the world's best solar resources, 30% of critical minerals, and 1/5 of humanity. Yet it receives just 2% of global clean energy investment. At the same time, more than 600 million Africans still lack access to electricity. This is unjust and a lost opportunity for Africa and the world.
That was UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And in commodity markets, gold prices climbed back above $4,000 per ounce on Thursday, recovering from earlier losses as a weaker U.S. dollar and falling Treasury yields boosted investor demand. The rebound followed the release of the latest U.S. inflation data, which largely matched market expectations and eased fears of stronger than expected price pressures. Although inflation remains above the Federal Reserve's 2% target, investors interpreted the report as reducing the urgency for additional monetary tightening. At the same time, falling oil prices helped reduce broader inflation concerns after crude returned to levels seen before the onset of recent Iran-related tensions. Traders responded by lowering expectations for another Federal Reserve rate hike, with the probability of a September increase falling to 63%. Despite Thursday's rebound, gold remains down roughly 5% since the start of the year and nearly 20% below the record high reached in January. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of the break.
I'm trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
I'm also trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
Start a conversation with the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Check jamstockx.com for information and a list of registered stockbrokers. You can also call the Jamaica Stock Exchange at 876-967-3271 for information on how to begin. I am achieving my financial goals.
I'm achieving my financial goals.
And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, JMEA reappoints leadership team as industry faces key challenges. Regionally, Barbados extends deposit protection to credit union members. And internationally, UN pushes methane cuts as the world faces rising climate pressure globally. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.